All right. So my second slide, this is who we are. This is I want to start out with letting you know of our vision and mission. We are an IB school. We are a staff that is wanting to make sure that we really make a learning experience that's integrated and personalized for every student to accelerate their learning and understand the connection to our local and global community, because that is something that's very important to IB. Our mission is that we inspire and that we ensure that we are hitting whatever we need, as well as to make sure that students are achieving. We do this, and our purpose is we strategically and relentlessly ignite learners to develop the knowledge and skills to responsibly lead the Aurora Hills community to think globally and act locally. So that is our purpose. And I always ground whatever I'm doing in those few things. This is our second year inside of our redesign and our commitments. And so these were the things that we even did last year and that we're continuing to do. Some really huge pieces inside of what makes Aurora Hills a little bit unique and different is our master schedule and our MOU that we have been running on. Now this is our second year. We have done some huge things in and around like our staff leaderships and nominating those and what that looks like, and we'll get into that. We'll get into a little bit of like our summer learning and our design, but then also like our commitment to instructional leadership, and that is part of our redesign and why we did that. And then through our DDI and instructional routines and focus. Part of last year, and I don't know if you remember this, Andre, which has been great within the district doing it, but we now have a full day basically every single week with basically the DDI process that we're doing throughout the entire district. But that's something that we do every single week, and that we actually have teachers doing that process, then designing lessons and having an entire day. I didn't put like I did last year, where I really explained kind of what we call our Mustang U, is that day of full plan where, like, let's say our entire sixth grade teachers all have a day for DDI, like we did with the entire district, but we have that throughout. So that is something that's part of our, MOU and those kind of pieces. But let's get into our SPF. I put a little confetti. We actually did have a yellow party. We did move into improvement this year, which we were very excited about. Yes, it was by our hair of our chinny chin chin. And so there's a part of me that feels, and I'll just be real with you, and I know that you're one that loves to have just a real candid conversation. I was excited that we moved and that we grew and that we moved into the yellow, but it's not where I want to be. We're still not to the achievement as well as the proficiencies and those kind of pieces where I want. So next year, when I hope that we'll be talking, we'll be even further. And hey, I'm looking at performance. So that's where we're shooting for. Last year we definitely had some challenges, especially when we had TB right just before, CMAS, and it was a slightly challenging year last year, but that's where I'm staying. I'm excited about where we're moving, and especially since we have now really gotten to the swing of having a DDI process and having true time to plan with colleagues for an entire day, and like last year we had it for a whole year. We're getting that, and so now I just believe that we're going to be really shooting forward. So I'm excited about that. And one of the things inside of the SPF that I wanted to kind of highlight, not only just moving into the performance, but one of the things that we really are going to be doing a laser-like focus. I mean, yes, we're still focusing on our literacy and math. We're not there, like I said. But one of the huge things in our SPF was our science. We did not meet in our science, like even just participation. I think it was like 80-something% inside of our participation. But inside of that, on top of that, we just our scores are just so low in science. And so, when Carol and I had looked at and just picked apart the SPF, that was one of the things that I really want to focus in on. So I'm gonna touch base back into science in one of our asks, but I just want you to know inside of that, that was something that we really have been looking at and focusing on. So our 3 big rocks inside of our 90-day plan, they have not changed other than, you know, like we're, again, getting granular. We're continuing. Last year, we attended to the grade level standards and prioritized those and made sure that we were even looking at like, what does that look like? But then on top of that, we moved into, we looked at our scores, and we started like really digging into like our CLDE data, just even inside of like iReady, and even inside of CMAS, we started looking at just different buckets that we could really align to, and we started to shift our instructional framework. So I'll get into that a little bit more, but we're refining our instructional framework, and we call it the A Hills Way. So we'll get into that. Then we're still doing our data systems and structures where, you know, teachers are collaborating weekly. You know, so that's something that has not changed other than just some refinement inside of it. We also are doing collaborative cultures where, you know, looking at and really being specific inside of our culture and climate. So, and then, you know, especially with our shift this year and last year, we also noticed that we needed a huge like kind of rehaul on our social emotional learning. And so we've done quite a bit into just starting that. And so I'll get into that too. So those are our 3 big rocks. So high quality instruction. Inside of high quality instruction, our focus was grade level standards, but then also instructional framework. So what we started to do is define our, the strategy was refine our instructional framework. So we actually created the A Hills Way by providing, what we did was we gathered the data, like I told you, inside of like our CLDE data. We started noticing like our vocabulary, just in content vocabulary, was super low. And that's something that we could do across the board. We also noticed that like we started trying to think about some strategies that could be high leverage strategies. So we picked 4, which were collaboration, discourse, and then vocabulary. And, oh Lord, discourse, vocabulary, collaborative, and collaborative cultures. So like in collaboration. And so what we've done is we met with our instructional leadership team to create the like look fors and being very specific as to this is what like discourse looks like. This is what it does not look like. And we presented that into staff. And so that has been our look fors inside of like everything that we do. We also put it in, that's where I showed lesson planning that includes that. So every week, it's actually a part of our lesson plan, and they have to like number 1, identify the vocabulary that they're using that week, if you know, in talking through that, and then what strategy are they using to actually teach that vocabulary, or even discourse, like what day of the week are you using that, what strategy. We've provided them with a tool bank of like a ton of different strategies that they can try on. And once they say like, yes, I'm going to do this specific strategy, then we, once we look at their lesson plan, then that's where inside of like that accountability, that's that observation feedback cycle that we're going in and actually looking at, okay, so they're saying they're doing this specific strategy. Let's give them some feedback on that. And then it's that cycle. You know, the impact there, we've seen in lesson plans. So we have seen and had to tweak a little bit because we've started seeing what either their misconceptions are or, you know, what's working or what's not. So we've been doing some refinement inside of that, as well as our interim data. You know, we had 3 teachers inside of our 8th grade have at least had 30% of their students being proficient on all of the standards, not just like one specific standard. So we're looking at different data pieces there of moving it. And then one of the other indicators that we're doing for accountability pieces is that we have a benchmark, or we've got different standards that we've set, especially in and around the A Hills Way. And that was where 100% of our teachers will be utilizing those 4 strategies by the end of first semester. And so those are some of our strategies that or like accountability pieces that we're looking. And one of them is to have 30% of our students proficient, on prioritized standards inside of the interims. So we're moving towards that. Then in data systems and structures, we've got our focus on DDI. And this, again, like I was telling you, we call it Mustang U, which is our day of planning there. Our strategy inside of this is to formalize and track observation and feedback system. So as I was telling you, within high quality instruction, what they're planning for inside of that, because my admin team, so each one of us, I've got 3 assistant principals and then myself. And so we all have a specific team that we work with. So John Boo is one of my assistant principals. He works with our 7th grade team, or excuse me, our 8th grade team. And so he is in there the whole entire day. And he gets to see their planning, how they're doing their DDI cycle. He's seeing what their reteach is. He's seeing, hey, this is what we're planning for. So then in the observation feedback system inside of here is what is he giving feedback for the next day as they plan, along with any of us. So we could go to John and say, hey, John, I'm about to do this 8th grade observation. Talk to me about what's going on inside of, Mustang U. Then this year, which we realized last year, is really being intentional about planning what PD or what even cycle that teachers need to be on, and aligning that with the DDI days that we actually have had. And so, and making sure that they're ready for the interim, and how are they planning, and have they taken the interim, and all of these pieces. We've now made sure that we actually have created a new calendar system so that they know what's coming up and how their cycle is running, and what to be expecting. Whereas last year we didn't really have that refinement. As we were learning, we said, hey, this is something that we need. The other piece inside of this is we get 2 hours of PD every single week inside of Mustang U with our teachers. And so this was where we needed to be really intentional about the training of staff. And that's where it goes into the action. We're training staff on DDI, but also training them inside of PDs about what do they need, what's coming up, and having them know how to one of the things that we just trained on was do nows. Just a very easy, it's a strategy that we're using, but that they weren't actually using them effectively as we were doing our observations. And so next week, actually this week too, we've done checks for understanding. So things that we're noticing inside of our observation and feedback, we're going to be able, every week we get to be able to push in through that. Also this year, which has been really exciting, my instructional leadership team, we've been doing a lot of work around them doing observations and providing feedback or data to the staff. And so we did a whole reorganization and restructuring of how we do my instructional leadership team. And so they've been providing feedback as well as some learning and some training inside of our professional development inside of our Mustang U's, which has been great. So that's been something that we've been working on. Then in culture and climate, this has been I feel like this is kind of the ground level, whereas the other 2 we've been working on and we're getting into more refinement and those kind of pieces. Whereas culture and climate and looking at collaborative cultures, last year we really didn't have a lot of support inside of our behavioral management as well as our SEL. So we've done a whole shift. We've gotten another counselor. Thank you. That has been awesome. So now we have 3 counselors. We have, I also did, inside of my TE, I did hire a dean this year to help within tracking, and being able to respond to data, whereas my APs can now kind of focus more inside of instruction. And I do have an AP that is structured over our culture and climate and works with that team. But I've been working with Jessica Omerday, and we finally just got BASE. And so thank you for, getting BASE and having us be able to get access to that. We also are working with Second Step. Now, how we're using BASE, are you familiar, Andre, with BASE? No? Okay, so BASE it's actually really cool. It is a social emotional, computerized program that, so if we have a student that keeps getting angry all the time and then he's fighting, it actually, you can do different programs for them.
Yeah, based on that behavior.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
And it's got keystroke words, and if there's fire words, they call it, and even if they erase it, it comes to the administrators or the counselors that are dealing with it. So we're using that right now as more, not school-wide, but more intentional of students that are kind of showing behaviors that they would need this. So it's kind of in lieu of. We also joined the PBIS district cohort so that we can improve our practices inside of that, because we know that we need to get better. And then Second Step is a program that is like a thematic, how do you, like bullying or something like that, where it's school wide. So we're just about to get that going inside of all of because we have an advisory program, and so that we'll have that thematic out. We also are doing a universal screener that will be happening in a couple weeks, where we can, we're really good at helping the student that's very vocal about behaviors and showing it that way. We're not doing so well when it comes to those internal kind of pieces and those students that are struggling and not really vocalizing that. So that's where the universal screener, we're going to be starting to have groups inside of that. One of the things too this year, we normed and really laid out behavioral expectations, not only for teachers, but also for students, and how do we interact with that. That was something that we've done in the past, but it wasn't as very clearly, succinctly, this is what it looks like and doesn't look like, and we did that. One thing I did note in here, we did have a leadership organizational chart. One of the things that we learned inside of having my 3 APs over grade levels and having them be basically the person that also does the discipline. When we hired a dean, we kind of really had to structure out how do we really want to do this, and who's kind of, I call it the first responder. How do teachers know who to go to, what to do? And so this year we really did an organizational chart for everyone and communicated who's kind of over what group. So I've redesigned where 2 of my APs are my instructional APs. They're STEM, kind of math, science. And then I've got another AP, kind of humanities, English, social studies. And they're that go-to. And then I have another AP who is working with this SEL team to really kind of break that up if they need that help. Again, impact, just providing, and last year I felt like we were putting out fires. This year I feel like we're actually trying to be intentional about where the fire might happen and being able to respond to that, or be able to not have fires, that kind of thing. Let's see. This year we've created a referral tracker to make sure that we're looking at that. But that's where we're looking at for our student enrollment, is a benchmark of where we're at. We are right at enrollment. I want to, your message yesterday was talking about really inspiring and trying to make sure like where teachers understand what's so important about that. And so that's something that I want to actually get better at, and that might be something thinking about asking. I didn't put it on here, but I would love to maybe even work with Corey, because I realized that I don't have a video, like where I know that I've seen like at the high schools and you know, at even some other middle schools, they do a school video. I would love to do that, which we haven't. And I know that Corey had worked with me last year a little bit and said, hey, we'll do that. But I never got to the opportunity yet. So that would be one ask for. The other ask for is looking at district professional development aligned to our goals for Mustang U in and around science. So last year we had the ICs come in for like literacy, social studies, and math. And they really helped push into our Mustang U's. And I would love to see if we could get maybe a little bit more time with our ICs where they actually push in and help with that planning and help within our instruction that way. The other part I would ask is that within all like district PD, so when they come in and try to do like walkthroughs or anything like that, that it would be preceded with like planning with like us as a school leadership team to ensure that we align. Because sometimes we'll just have people come in and not be really aligned to what we're looking for and what we've been training on, like let's say checks for understanding and like what that specifically looks like. If they can just, you know, kind of really plan that with us, we'd love that. The other piece is access to hiring and posting a little earlier. Last year we did get some of that, and I thank you for that. But I would just ask that to be continued, because we do have a new hiring system. It's a very encumbersome kind of process that we have here, and we just want to continue that. I'll tell you, our hiring that we have done this year is totally hired up. I have incredible people in my building because of that process this year. In saying that, I would also like to request for not having to take any placements / like in district transfers for maybe the next 2 years. I know that like I'm just a traditional school, and so I've had some of that placement. That's been really hard on certain positions. Like when I first came in, I had a math teacher that was placed in here from Central, and he was my lowest scoring teacher on any of our tests. And, you know, he is now since retired, probably because of my firm constant pressure on him. But it's just one of those things that I'm like, if we can hold that, that would be great. I mean, I'm in that critical space for CDE in these holding years, and I would just ask for that. The last thing, inside of our MOU, I know that I've talked to Bruce Wilcox who's the president of AEA, and he had mentioned that the MOU is up for like negotiation inside of the master agreement. And if we can just put that in there, like, or somebody can advocate to continue the MOU process and allowing us to do that, man, it is critical to what we're doing here at A Hills. And so I just would ask for somebody to be an advocate for that, because that's really important. And that's what I got for you.
Okay, I appreciate it. We're gonna review these all presentations and summarize to make sure that we capture exactly what we thought we heard.
Okay.
And then we'll be connecting with you for any specific supports that you've requested and what that looks like, right? So that's part of our process. When we come back together, it's all about, okay, well, what was the impact? I mean, do you see us making the shifts and in addressing the things that you've asked for? So both Anthony and Damon will be a part of the process to review the video to see where they fit.
Okay.
And then their folks will be reaching out as well.
All right, perfect.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, no, thank you. This has been really cool, the new process.
That's it. All right.
All right, bye guys. Thank you.